She's a Cleveland County sweetheart. And not only that, she's a granddaughter, a daughter, a sister, and she's now an aunt.
At 4 in the morning on Valentine's Day 2000, a truck driver was heading home through a violent rainstorm in rural North Carolina when his headlights caught something impossible. A small child walking alone on the side of the Highway 18 in the pouring rain in the middle of the night. He turned around to check on her, but when she saw his headlights approaching, she ran into the woods and disappeared. Less than 2 hours earlier, 9-year-old Asha Degree had been sound asleep in her bedroom. Her father had checked on her. She was safe. She was home. But sometime between 2:30 and 4 in the morning, Asha packed a bag, walked out of her house into a raging storm, and left her family forever. No one knows why. No one saw her leave, and for over 25 years, no one has been able to explain what would make a shy, responsible 9-year-old girl walk into darkness alone. This is the disappearance and the recent breakthrough in the case of Asha Degree. On February 14, 2000, Asha Degree vanished from her home in Shelby, North Carolina. She was 9 years old, a fourth grader, a straight A student, and a star basketball player who was described by everyone who knew her as shy, obedient, and terrified of the dark. And yet, on that rainy Valentine's Day morning, Asha walked out of her house in the middle of the night and was never seen again. For over 2 decades, this case baffled investigators, but in 2024 and 2025, shocking new development emerged. DNA evidence, property searches, and a chilling confession overheard at a party. I killed Asha Degree. Investigators now believe Asha was murdered. They believe they know who's responsible, and they believe they're close, very close, to finally solving one of the America's most haunting child disappearance cases. Asha Degree was born on August 5, 1990, in Shelby, North Carolina. She was the youngest of 2 children, raised by her parents, Harold and Michaela Degree. Harold worked as a dock loader at a glass manufacturing plant. Michaela worked as a kawaii American, building pianos. They were a tight-knit, deeply religious family. Harold and Michaela had married on Valentine's Day, 1988, a detail that would make Asha's disappearance on the same date even more devastating. Asha and her older brother, O'Brien, were what you would call latchkey kids. They let themselves in after school while their parents were still at work. But don't let that term fool you. The Degree household was strict, structured, and safe. The kids were expected to do their homework, stay inside, and follow the rules. There was no computer in the house. Life centered around family, church, and school. Asha attended Falston Elementary School, where she was a straight A student. She loved to read. She was shy, sometimes painfully so, but once you got to know her, she was funny, competitive, and incredibly smart. She played basketball for the Falston Bulldogs as a point guard. She was good, really good, and she was fiercely competitive, the kind of kid who hated losing more than anything. She was also known for 2 things that made her disappearance even more baffling. She was terrified of the dark. She always had the nightlight on. She wouldn't go outside after dark, even with her parents. She was extremely obedient. She followed the rules. She didn't act out. She didn't sneak around. This was not a child who ran away. This was not a child who would disobey her parents. And this was definitely not a child who would walk into the pitch black night during a rainstorm. And yet, that's exactly what she did. The weekend before Asha disappeared was, by all accounts, completely normal. On Friday, February 11th, 2000, Cleveland County schools were closed. The Degree kids spent the day at their aunt's house, while Harold and Akila worked. That evening, both kids went to basketball practice at their school. On Saturday, February 12th, Asha's basketball team, the Falston Bulldogs, played their first game of the season. They were undefeated coming in. Asha was one of their best players. That game didn't go well. Asha fouled out. Her team lost by 1 point. For a competitive 9-year-old who hated losing, it was crushing. Witnesses said Asha cried after the game, along with her teammates. But by the time she watched her brother's game later that day, she seemed fine. She was over it. She was joking around, cheering with O'Brien, acting like herself. Saturday, February 13th, was a special Sunday for the Degree family. They went to church from a relative's house. They attended Sunday school. They spent time with extended family. Around 8 p.m., Harold and Aquila brought the kids home and sent them to bed. Asha and O'Brien shared a bedroom. They went to sleep in their bunk beds like they did every night. Around midnight, the power went out in their neighborhood due to a car accident that struck a utility pole. The power came back on around 12:30 a.m. At 2:30 a.m. on Monday, February 14th, the Valentine's Day, Harold got up to use the bathroom. He checked on his kids, as he always did. Both Asha and O'Brien were sound asleep in their beds. Everything was fine. 4 hours later, Asha was gone. At 6:30 a.m. on February 14th, Asha Degree went to wake her children for school. O'Brien was in his bed, but Asha's bed was empty. Asha immediately called Harold, who was already at work. Together, they searched the house. Asha was nowhere to be found. And that's when they noticed what was missing. Asha's black backpack, a change of clothes, her purse, and some personal items. The house showed no signs of forced entry. Nothing was broken. No windows were open. The doors were locked from the inside. Asha hadn't been taken. She had left on her own. At 6:40 a.m., Harold and Asha called 911 and reported their daughter missing. But here's what they didn't know yet. Asha had already been seen hours earlier, miles from home, walking alone in the storm. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m. that morning, at least 2 separate motorists reported seeing a young black girl walking south along North Carolina Highway 18, about 1.3 miles from the Degree family home. She was wearing a long-sleeved white shirt and white pants, no coat, no umbrella, just walking alone in the pouring rain. One of the drivers, a truck driver, later described the weather as a storm raging, wind, heavy rain, pitch black darkness. The truck driver found it so strange that he turned his vehicle around and came back to check on the girl. But when she saw his headlights approaching, she ran off the roadside and disappeared into the woods. He didn't think much of it at the time, but later that day, when he saw the news report about a missing 9-year-old girl, he immediately called police. The motorist's description matched Asha's perfectly. Cleveland County Sheriff Dan Crawford later confirmed, "We're pretty sure it was her because the description they gave are consistent with what we know she was wearing." This was the last confirmed sighting of Asha Degree. She ran into the woods along Highway 18 and vanished. The search for Asha Degree began immediately. The FBI, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, local law enforcement, and hundreds of volunteers from the Shelby community joined the effort. Helicopters with thermal imaging cameras scanned the woods. Search dogs combed the areas where Asha was last seen. Divers searched nearby bodies of water. But there was a problem. The dogs couldn't pick up a consistent scent trail. The rain had washed everything away. On February 15th, the day after Asha disappeared, a business owner made a strange discovery. Inside the doorway of her tool shed, about 100 yards west of where Asha was last seen on Highway 18, she found a white pencil from the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, a green marker, a Mickey Mouse hairball. Police confirmed that all 3 items belonged to Asha. Near the shed, investigators also found candy wrappers, the same type of candy Asha's parents said she had at home. But the most disturbing discovery was something else found in that shed, a wallet-sized photograph of another young girl. Asha's family didn't recognize her. Despite the photo being shared widely by news outlets, no one has ever come forward to identify the girl in the picture. Who was she? Why was her photo in Asha's possession? And why was it left in that shed? To this day, investigators have no answers. For over a year, the case went cold. Despite extensive searches, no trace of Asha was ever found. But on August 3rd, 2001, 17 months after Asha's disappearance, construction workers were digging an access road for a new home in Burke County, about 26 miles north of Shelby. One of the workers noticed something unusual in the dirt, a black backpack, wrapped tightly in two black plastic trash bags, buried. The worker opened it and found a name and a phone number written inside. Asha Degree. The backpack was immediately turned over to police. FBI took it to their laboratory in Quantico, Virginia for forensic analysis. Inside the backpack, investigators found several changes of Asha's clothing, a pair of her jeans, and some personal items. But they also found two things that didn't belong to Asha. A new Kids on the Block concert t-shirt with a red collar. Asha's mother confirmed it wasn't hers. Asha wasn't even alive when the New Kids on the Block were at their peak popularity in the late 1980s. And a copy of McElliot's Pool by Dr. Seuss. The book had been checked out from the Falston Elementary School library, Asha's school, but library records didn't go back far enough to confirm who had checked it out. Why were these items in Asha's backpack? Who did they belong to? And most importantly, who buried the backpack 26 miles away from where Asha was last seen? Sheriff Dan Crawford made a chilling statement after the backpack was found. He said, "It was thrown out by a moving car. It's highly likely now that this has involved foul play. The case was no longer just a missing child. It was now a suspected homicide." For over 2 decades, investigators and true crime enthusiasts have tried to answer one question. Why did Asha Degree leave her house on that night? Let's break down the major theories. Theory number 1, she was groomed by an adult. This is the theory that most investigators have focused on in recent years. Asha was a shy, obedient child who was terrified of the dark. Only way she would have left her house willingly in the middle of the night is if she trusts someone who had convinced her to meet them. The items in her backpack that didn't belong to her, the New Kids on the Block shirt, the Dr. Seuss book, the photo of the unknown girl, suggests someone was giving her things, building trust, preparing her for something. There's some supporting evidence for this. As for instance, Asha packed her bag ahead of time, suggesting this was planned. She left willingly, no signs of forced entry. The backpack being buried suggests someone was trying to hide evidence, and the recent DNA evidence points to specific individuals who may have had contact with Asha. My take on this is that this is the most likely explanation. Someone groomed Asha over time, convinced her to sneak out, and picked her up on Highway 18. The fact that her backpack was found 26 miles away, buried and wrapped in trash bag, screams cover up. Another theory is that she was upset about the basketball game. Somehow theorized that Asha was more upset about falling out and losing the basketball game than anyone realized. Maybe she ran away because she felt like she had let her team down. But there's multiple problems with this theory. By Sunday, Asha seemed completely fine. Running away doesn't explain the backpack being buried 26 miles away, and it doesn't explain the items in the backpack that weren't hers. Also, Asha was terrified of the dark. No amount of embarrassment would make her walk into a storm alone at 4 a.m. I think this theory doesn't hold up. Kids get upset about sports all the time. They don't pack a bag and walk into the night. Theory number 3 is that she was sleepwalking. Asha had never sleepwalked before, but some have suggested This could explain why she left the house. But as with the previous theory, there's just too many problems with this theory. She packed a bag ahead of time. She walked over a mile in straight direction. Sleepwalkers don't usually run away when approached. This doesn't explain the buried backpack. I think this is total nonsense. Sleepwalking doesn't explain any of the evidence. Then the final theory for tonight is that she was meeting a friend. Maybe Asha left to meet a friend. Someone her age. Someone she trusted. Maybe it was supposed to be an adventure. The problems with this theory is that what 9-year-old has the freedom to be out at 4 a.m.? Why would Asha agree to something so dangerous? This still requires adult involvement to explain the buried backpack. I think if a friend was involved, there was definitely an adult pulling the strings. For over 20 years, the case went cold, but in September 2024, everything changed. On September 10th and 11th, 2024, the FBI, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, and North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation executed multiple search warrants on properties in Shelby connected to a local family, the Deadmans. Investigators seized cell phones, a dark green vehicle matching the description of a car seen near Highway 18 the night Asha disappeared, and some other evidence. According to search warrant affidavits released in 2024, DNA evidence found on a hair sample from Asha's undershirt matched member of the Deadman family. Specifically, the DNA pointed to Anali Ramirez, who was 13 years old at the time of Asha's disappearance in 2000. She had two older sisters who were 15 and 16 at the time. But the most shocking development came from a witness statement. In September 2024, a man came forward to Cleveland County investigators. He said that in the mid-2000s, several years after Asha disappeared, he occasionally frequented bars and parties with members of the Deadman family. At one party, he witnessed Lizzie Deadman Foster, who was 16 at the time of Asha's disappearance, sobbing uncontrollably and repeatedly saying, "I killed Asha Degree." In February 2025, Lizzie Foster was asked to take a polygraph test. According to search warrants, she was asked whether she was concealing information about Asha's disappearance, and she failed it. The polygraph indicated deception. Following that interview, Foster called her ex-husband and spoke to him for over 45 minutes. Investigators described the ex-husband as uncooperative in the case. On April 4th, 2025, law enforcement searched a property in Lincoln County connected to the investigation. No human remains were found, but investigators confirmed they are pursuing active leads. In September 2024, for the first time ever, investigators publicly stated their belief. Asha Degree was a victim of homicide. Her body was concealed. David Teddy, the attorney for Roy Deadman, whose property was searched, made a cryptic statement. He believed that the investigation will soon reveal that a now deceased individual was responsible for what happened to Asha, but he declined to elaborate. Asha Degree would be 35 years old today. She should be alive. She should have graduated high school, gone to college, built a life. Instead, on February 14th, 2000, someone convinced a shy, terrified of the dark, 9-year-old girl to pack a bag and walk into a storm. And someone buried her backpack 26 miles away, wrapped in trash bags, hoping it would never be found. For 25 years, Asha's family has fought for answers. Her mother Aquila still believes Asha is alive. "Until somebody can prove me wrong, I'm still going to believe that," she said in February 2025, "because all I have is hope." But investigators now believe Asha was murdered. They believe they know who was involved, and they believe they are close, very close, to solving the case. Every year, the Degree family holds a walk from their home to a billboard on Highway 18 near where Asha was last seen. It's a reminder, a promise that Asha will not be forgotten. Known as the Shelby's sweetheart, Asha Degree became a symbol of community's love, family's resilience, and a case that refused to die. The truth is out there. Someone knows what happened, and after 25 years, justice may finally be coming. This was the story of Asha Degree, a girl who walked into the storm, a family who never stopped searching, and a case that may finally be solved.